Hello, and welcome to the Plenty of Positivity podcast. I am your host, Courtney Beck, and today we have a very special guest, Mary Crean. Mary is a digital marketing director at Nassau Financial Group, and she is an AI and marketing strategy leader, as well as a host of Prime Life podcast. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to welcome Mary Crean.
Thank you, Courtney, for having me. It's great to be here. It really is. Taking care of our body, mind, and soul has always been important to me. So when I saw your podcast, I said, I cannot believe this woman is doing this amazing podcast on positivity. I would love to be on, and I'm so honored to be here with you.
Mary, it is such an honor to have you on the podcast. And I must tell our listeners that when I was doing research for this conversation, your background is so incredibly impressive. And so, just those three components that we always talk about: life lessons, career experiences, sport experiences. I cannot wait to really take a deep dive into career experiences. So, Mary, why don't we begin with an introduction and a background of yourself?
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for your kind words. I'm getting a little choked up, and I'm humbled that you would say what you have about me today. So, as you said, I'm currently the digital marketing director at Nassau Financial Group, where we help people protect their savings and create reliable income in retirement. This is only one aspect of everything I've done. I started my career as a serial entrepreneur that spanned fitness, creative work, and digital strategy. And it's been an interesting journey for me. And I guess I would say that I didn't realize I wasn't risk averse. And I guess I am a little bit now because I've tried many different things and it's really been in many different industries. So from entrepreneurship, I dove into nonprofit leadership. I was always a fundraiser and a marketing person. So the through line for me has always been sales and marketing. That's never changed. I love connecting people. I love, uh, you know, helping people get what they want. So I think that's, again, always been the through line. And there's always been a part of me that's very philanthropic in the community. I'm a chair of a nonprofit board. I'm very passionate about 2-for-1 sports. I think that you know that about me, helping all kids uh, get the opportunity or gain access to the opportunity to build confidence and skills on and off the court. And I think just this health and wellness ethos that I started with many years ago when my husband and I owned a gym together has never left me. Here at Nassau Financial Group, I do all the health and wellness videos. We actually have a fitness center director, and it's joyful for me because I believe so passionately about the body, mind, and soul and how much that has an impact on positivity and our mindset. And I'm not saying that just to sound cliche because I'm on a positivity podcast with you, Courtney. I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. And the movement piece, the fitness, the sports, in many times of my life has saved my life. And I have two grown adults, and they have always participated in sports, different sports. And I know that's had a significant positive impact on their life, their professional life, their leadership, personal lives.
So true. It's so true. Mary, I want to thank you for that introduction. And, to your point, it's so interesting because when I was coming up with this particular podcast, it was, of course, like you just said, like plenty of positivity is the main theme, if you will. But the three components, life, sport, and career, as you were speaking about it, one really does kind of flow into the others. And so like we were talking even before our conversation now, and how positivity really can create a ripple effect with those that are around us, whether it is on a team, right? In sport, or if it is in career, like you're in a group team project in business, but bringing that positivity, it really is a choice. And I did want to go from the very beginning. Like I said, your career background. so incredibly impressive. But you were speaking about just having that initially not so much risk adverse. What allowed you that mindset? Was there like one particular moment? Did maybe your parents influence you in some way? But how did you develop just like that sense of like fearlessness? Like, I'm going to go for this and I'm going to maybe learn lessons along the way, or man, I'm going to succeed.
Yeah, I love that question. And in preparing for this podcast, I think it was intertwined in my notes that I do have in front of me. So at a young age, I had some physical challenges. I was born with a congenital hip, which I don't remember. And then when I was a young teen, and gymnastics was all that I did. But I had to have surgery and I had to have a metal rod put in my back. So there was no more gymnastics. And that may sound like, well, so what? Okay, you did gymnastics, big deal. You weren't on an Olympic team or you weren't on. So that really changed my life, I believe, because I felt that I was a little bit odd and I had to reinvent myself, even back then as a young person, as to what I wanted to show up as. And it gave me this tenacity. I wore a body cast for a year, and a lot of people, when I say that to them, they're like, "Oh my goodness." Um, so I had to be tenacious. I had to be like what you said before. There wasn't anything that I couldn't do, and I was gonna do it no matter what. I was gonna try it and do it, and if that didn't work, I'm gonna go over here and try something else. So I do believe that that is what started me, and I know my parents had an impact on that because they were, worried, that I had to have the surgery and what would happen and all of that. And they were good parents. They are good parents and they supported me. Um, but I have to say, there were times where it was a little bit of, I don't know where I was going to end up or where I was going to land and how I was going to show up.
And, I think that's so interesting as you mentioned that because I feel like the theme almost of this podcast could be just like perspective. And to your point, sometimes the uncertainty could be viewed, especially as an entrepreneur, like almost thrilling. But then on the flip side, some people are like, no, I want something that's at least structured where I know what
Exactly.
potentially is going to happen. You know what I mean? But I just have to agree with you. I do. I think that there's some kind of like thrill and excitement about the unknown. And my question for you, I think this is so incredibly remarkable, but you have been in wearable art, fitness, video production. So the transition between even three, and obviously you've even gone into insurance as well. There's so many different areas we're going to speak about today.
So true. So true.
But I think this is fascinating. Like, what are maybe some leadership lessons that you've been able to take maybe from one industry to the next?
That's a great question. Another great question. And I'll take a step back with those three industries as an entrepreneur. I think maybe I was a little more prepared for the fitness business, the health and wellness, because at the time I was an undergraduate, I was studying nursing, of course, switched gears again and finished my degree in nutrition. But I think I had more of that background. My husband and I, we were in the three businesses together. When I stepped into wearable art, we moved across country to Santa Barbara, California. And didn't know a lot. I mean, did some research on the area and really at the time before e-commerce was like in vogue, sent outfits to people all over the world because Santa Barbara was that kind of force of nature, if you will. And then in the video productions, again, not really knowing a lot, but with the video production, we actually created a show and it was called Connecticut Lifestyles. And we got the concept that we got from when we were in California. And so, did we know anything about video production or about creating scripts that you had to be on camera for? No, no, and no. And so, I think it's about you need to start before you feel ready. You learn faster by doing. Clarity shows up once you're in motion. Discipline keeps you steady. creativity keeps you growing. And as you said earlier, right, you said, oh, the unknown, that could be exciting. And absolutely. And the other bonus was, for better or for worse, we were the boss. And so we were telling ourselves what to do. Now that's a double edged sword, right? Because if you things don't work out exactly, who are you to blame? Yourself. So you can't blame anyone. But just feeling like you could try different things and pivot when needed, and pivoting was always needed in each of those 3 businesses, as they were also when I stepped out of the 3rd business. Some things went awry. I had to find a job pretty darn quickly, and I did. And that's where I stepped into the nonprofit, space. Went for an interview, didn't really know. I don't know what fundraising is, but I was doing it, I guess, for my kids' school. But it's just about taking everything you learn and connecting the dots, because in some ways, unless you're a doctor operating on people or even maybe a lawyer trying a legal case, and that's even debatable from my estimation, you can figure it out.
True. Mary, it's the advice that you're giving, I think 100% could help people because I say this, I know so many people out there. I mean, even when I'm teaching like students, we talk about how the majority of people have an idea, but it is about the execution, the taking action, and
Yes.
just as you mentioned, just
Yeah.
that sense of like continuing to learn no matter what. And yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like medicine for me, I could not really get near because I don't know, I was not born with that type of brain. But to your point, when you're put in different situations or different industries, there is like where there's a will, there's a way. So I 100% agree with you. And you mentioned fundraising. Now, I want to talk about a specific stat we have here, which is absolutely remarkable. How did you go from school fundraising to influencing over 60 million in corporate contributions?
Again, I think it's always about relationships. And I remember when I stepped into fundraising, a lot of the people that surrounded me were like, "Oh, it's so hard to ask for money. It's exhausting. You're always made to feel like, oh, you're never going to be able to do this or do that." But I'm one of those people, and I like to say it in this order. You have to get people to know you, like you, and trust you in short order. And when you have good relationships with people, um, anything is possible. The other piece, I think, is that I was always focused on the connection. And sometimes, like, I'll give you an example. There's a room filled with people, and I'm at an event, and everyone is going over, all the fundraisers are going over to the usual people that they know, maybe have some deep pockets or they know of them. And I will likely maybe go over to someone, which I have this specific example, someone who's kind of standing over by themselves and looking a little bit socially awkward. Turns out that person is like the head of this big foundation who wants to sit next to me when we're watching the presentation. And there I have this connection, and I don't know who that person is. They didn't know me, and that's not how the conversation started. And so I've always loved that. I also include a little bit of serendipity with that. And like the saying goes, I never judge a book by its cover. And I think that's always served me well. And the last point I'll make is that you have to get over the word no, because no can mean no today, but not no forever. And that's just how it is. And so there are people that maybe say no to you, but I always find when you have a good relationship with someone, they'll say, I can't work with you right now, but I can refer you to someone that I know would love what you're doing.
So true. It reminds me, those were lessons that I learned along the way with sales. When I was in pharmaceutical sales, the importance of developing strong professional relationships.
Exactly.
Because I mean, like I said, I did not have a medical background. You went to 2 weeks of training, right? But it prepared you enough. And I will say that was more along the lines of what I found out to be my strength as far as just the communication, but how important the relationship building was because for the majority of the time, whether it was like the product in my bag, it may have already been out there for a while. They knew about it obviously much more than I did without that medical background. So it really did. It came down to the small things. If you did not know something, did when you said that you were going to follow up, did you actually follow up? And it's those small things that make such a big difference. And, my next question is from fundraising to you're a podcast host. I think this is absolutely incredible. What was maybe something as you went into podcasting? Like, number one, what made you go the podcasting route? But number two, maybe what was maybe something that surprised you along the way?
Yeah, those are also really good questions to ponder. Well, podcasting for me was pretty natural because I love to talk to people like you. And sometimes I'm better in smaller groups than I am if I have to get on a stage because I don't do this regularly and talk to a large group. I'm a little bit more intimidated by that. But I think it goes back to probably what you may experience, which is you're curious. You really want to get to know someone. You want to hear what they have to say. And you know you're going to learn something that you can then take away and then better share with someone else. So I think that made me not so worry so much about going into podcasting. In terms of what has surprised me, um, not too much. I think what I have learned is if you can get people to smile and to laugh like you're doing with me today, you've got a beautiful smile and you're very upbeat, of course, positivity, but still you are um, not just saying that you have a positivity podcast, you are living it. Like you are the brand, you are living your brand, which is impressive. But it's just about connecting with people and again, finding a way to make them feel good because right, we know the Maya Angelou quote something like people aren't going to remember what you said, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. So I think it doesn't matter what you do for a living. I think that's always going to be a critical element. And I love podcasting because it gives us the opportunity to educate individuals. And in my case, I talk a lot about longevity and living longer, living better. And I really want to educate people. I want to keep learning because I'm getting older too, right? And I want to make sure that I'm thinking through everything that I can possibly and live my best life, but also help others in the process.
I love that. And I would love to even add too, from my perspective, I knew that there was going to be a sense of community, but to the point, like you said, to take it a step further of not just building the community, but the connection with others and really allowing people to have a platform to speak and to share their story. You had mentioned in the previous question, but never judge a book by its cover, and that was a lesson that I learned very young, and I really do, I take that with me and even each career because it's easy, especially if we're meeting somebody for the first time, we look on LinkedIn or we try to figure it out and think that we have it figured it out strictly from a page, but when in reality, when we get to know somebody, maybe there were struggles along the way that even though the resume looks absolutely perfect. I could at least vouch for myself because behind the scenes, I was so lost. And so, it really is. It's about just allowing people like that platform just to allow them to tell their story. And when we allow people to tell their story, I really do. I think we could like the power of connection could be amplified that much more. So I absolutely love that you mentioned that. And when we talk about like the transition between fitness, art, video production, even insurance, was as you reflect back along this journey so far, is there one particular skill maybe that really you look back and you're like, wow, I could see now that really has helped me throughout the transition between all of these industries, or maybe even there was a couple.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind very quickly is adaptability, but then I also want to add in resilience because you have to be resilient. right? Because things are not going to always go so smoothly. But you said something earlier, and I want to commend you here because what I love about people that come from one industry into another is they have a different and a fresh perspective. But I think getting back to my point, I think being adaptable, because if you can adjust, you can grow. And if you are willing to maybe do something different, not that you've done the same thing for 30 years, and I'm not criticizing anyone that's had that path, but it really helps you in life when things happen that perhaps are unexpected, whether it's your own personal life and journey, or your spouse or your significant other, or if you have children or grandchildren, whatever your situation is. Because I think, especially as women, if you don't mind, I'm going to say this a little bit, I'll genderize. We always want to fix things. We want to help people. We don't want people in general to be sad or to have things maybe not turn out the way they want. Although we do need to let people experience and figure things out for themselves. But again, I go back to adaptability and I think resilience. Those will always be the two, I think, key phrases for me or key words.
I love that you mention both of those words because I have been thinking about this a lot, even with teaching students in these rapidly changing, ever so changing landscapes with technology and how I love how you mentioned it because it really caught me. I was thinking about it as you were speaking. When you think about the fresh perspective coming into an organization and maybe not necessarily having been in that industry, I'm like wondering if that's going to be or can be, should I say, almost a competitive advantage for a company because it's that sense of it's a diverse perspective. It's something that maybe they don't have those sense like a sense of biases or like they know certain companies within that industry, but you're right, like being able to adapt quicker because they see things differently. Or maybe they're resilient, like you said. I mean, I love those two words, but they've come from maybe a different background where, just like we were saying in sales, for example, it's no, no, no.
Yeah,
Man, if it takes 10 times or 20, I'm going to get this.
exactly.
But, I was just thinking about that because I think it's so applicable to the landscape that we live in today. And, I want to take a step back. I was kind of alluding to it in that last particular question, but you have been immensely successful in your career. Yeah, absolutely. Was there a time when along the way there was maybe a challenge that you would be willing to speak about and that you were able to overcome that challenge? Like, what was maybe the mindset or the perspective that really kind of drove you forward?
Yeah, it's another great question. I think when I decided to step away from being in the nonprofit sector, this is what I said to myself. I got my MBA later in life. I wanted to make sure my two grown adults got through their education. My husband and I chose to do private school all the way through, and we wanted to make sure that that had landed on their feet and that they had the care and our attention to help guide them to really select, hopefully, careers that were going to work for them, which my husband and I didn't necessarily have that guidance, and that's sort of my story, and not to sound negative about it. So, when I decided to step out, I said, "I either wanna run a nonprofit or I need to get out." And at the time, I wasn't super passionate about anything, and it's not that I had applied for ED positions, executive director, and I'd been rejected or anything. So I said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go into the for-profit," because I had a few friends tell me, "Mary, I think you'd be better off in the for-profit." There were a lot of naysayers. They're like, "You can't go from nonprofit to for-profit. That's never gonna happen." So that's when I stepped into the insurtech world, which landed me into insurance. And I remember our chief growth officer here at Nassau Financial Group, in one of the interviews, he asked me, "What is one of the scariest things you've ever done?" And I said, "Well, Tom," his name is Tom Buckingham. He's our chief growth officer. He's a great guy. I said, "Well, there are a couple of things, but I'm going to select one." And the one was, look, here I am in insurance trying to switch gears. I don't know if this is going to work out. And it's not like I have tons more years ahead of me. And so that for me was an aha moment, but also kind of I thought, okay, so you're courageous and you're giving it a whirl. It may not work out. And so I think it just goes back to, I think that is an example of a more recent, um, ex you know, example for you. I think that's what you asked me.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I do. I think, you know, as we move forward, I really want to get into some specifics. I'm going to read something with the tech startup Work on X, which reached the top 20 at Startup Boot Camp. And so, Mary, I would just love for you to explain, like, as far as transitioning into this journey of tech, of startup mentality, what was that like? And what was the exciting, like, part of this?
It's funny, it wasn't that much of a stretch for me because all of the businesses I had been in were not necessarily tech, but they were concept to reality. So it wasn't like someone like I have a friend who owns several McDonald's and she said to me, "Well, what you did is a lot harder than what I did because I just went to McDonald University and they told me what to do and had one McDonald's and et cetera. But what you've done is you've taken nothing and you've created something." So that I think was a very easy bridge. Yes, the tech part was never in those other businesses. Well, I shouldn't say that because the video production there was a lot of tech. I was learning how to use digital cameras when they weren't even when they were just like on the scene and being able to do post production. And yeah, there was some tech. But I also think it was about pitching because there were so many times in my life where I had to make what I call a cold call and try to get a sale and pitch. So I had to speak really quickly and try to get someone's attention and try to get a hook. And so when I watched startups do that, and I was involved in that process, I could see myself and I would say, because they say what you want for others, you should want what you want for yourself, you should want for others. And so I wanted that for them. So I wanted to help them with, the branding. Is your branding consistent? Is your pitch sharp? Did you get the attention of those you need to get based on the audience that you're trying to go after? So I think that's really how I would describe it.
That's incredible. And, I just want to follow up with this because I think this is so incredibly impressive. But as you were in this particular role, you caught the eye of Hartford's managing director. And from this point, this role, as you moved forward, would then unite startups and scale ups such as insurance giants like Travelers, Cigna, the Hartford, and more. So, what was that part like?
Well, that was an interesting part, and it was also probably a little on the more challenging side because as anyone knows that wants to work with large corporations, especially insurance companies, and this is not to say anything negative, there's a very long runway. So it does become a sale, if you will, that takes a lot of time. And there are multiple layers in every company, in any enterprise. So it's like, am I getting to the right person? Am I getting to a decision maker? Now, we know, from pharmaceutical sales that you were in and different things you've done. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to know who the decision maker is, right? But I think in general, sometimes someone who doesn't appear to be a decision maker can be. So, absolutely, in that short run of time that I did that sector, the insurtech sector, I was actually impressed with myself. However, I would say I had a little bit of naivete in terms of, oh, I can make those sales quicker. I can, get those sponsorships in faster because I know some people in the companies that you mentioned. But that was a little bit more, I think, challenging than I had anticipated. But again, I think when it goes back to this can-do spirit. Um, you just want to push forward. Uh, you're going to hear no, but you're not afraid to hear no. I think it just kind of, sets us up. And, eh, it goes back to like, this may sound a little bit off the cuff, but, when I watch a lot of Netflix series, Apple TV series. I watch a lot of sports documentaries. And the reason I do is because I'm not just watching and laughing or getting heartbroken, because of the trials and tribulations, but I love to pull a message out of it. And, I think like with Ted Lasso, right? Be curious, not judgmental, believe, right? And those are just some of the messages that have stuck with me that I have tried to integrate into my life. There's also another gentleman that I really love. His name is Todd Durkin, and he is, an impact coach. He coaches professional athletes as well as, executives, and he's all about, get your mind right, and you know, celebrate every win. And he's about the body, mind, and soul. So I think it's like anyone we can find that we can learn from and then take that knowledge and adapt it into our own life. That's truly what I look for all the time because I need that inspiration. I don't know about you, Courtney, but I need it. I need it every day.
Mary, I completely agree with you. And there is something about, I know you had specifically mentioned like sports documentaries. There is something so powerful about them. Like, I love these stories about the underdog, the one
Me
that
too.
was rising up and you did not see them coming.
Yeah.
It just excites me, and it really does. You could transition that same message into life in general, or if you were starting a company and people are doubting you or criticizing what you're doing, but just that perspective. And I think sports really is so incredibly powerful when it comes to the lessons that we learn in sport. And to kind of divert into, which is a great transition because you really did. You set me up great for this, but you were also involved with a big shout out to the Boyles, Steve and Carrie Boyle.
Yes. Love those people.
Yes. They are amazing. They, of course, were on the podcast. And so they're doing incredible things. And you are also part of that organization, 241 Sports. So, if you could please share some specifics about how your background in so many different areas has been able to maybe contribute to your work with 241
Oh,
Sports.
yeah. The great question. So years back, I don't want to say 4 or 5, Steve called me and because I met him from a prior nonprofit job that I had. And he said, we're going to be a nonprofit from a for-profit with, transitioning, still doing the camps, but really doing the underserved communities. And I said, he said, can you help us? And I said, sure. What do you want me to help you with? And so I knew, me that I would want to like right away, like, okay, what you need a rebrand. What does your website look like? Let's start there. So what I did was I took my hat from all of the years of, you know, marketing, omni channel, I'll call it, but also into the digital marketing that I've learned so much in the last few years. But also because life's too short for just one sport and the social emotional learning that they're doing with for all kids melted my heart. And I'm a generalist because like I love PR and I'm actually quite good at it. So, I've gotten them on TV several times. I've helped them with a few of their events, the Blue Jean Mile and now Play It Forward coming up. And I've helped craft messages for them and, I've given them social media input and they're just wonderful people. And because I believe in what they do, I think sometimes, I need to take a step back in my life and this is not to criticize my parents or even what I've done for my own children, but there were some tough financial times. Even when I was a kid and then even raising my own kids, my husband and I wanted the best for them and we believed in sports and movement. And so sometimes we would have to like trade some of our work to get the kids so they could do camps and things like that. And so I don't want any kid who wants to do something like this to not have the opportunity to be given access. And plus the other thing, and I don't necessarily, I could talk about 241 all day, but you know, how cool is it to learn fencing, right? Like how cool is it to learn some of the sports that they do teach kids like the rad ball and different things? Because who knows, it's not like they're pushing kids to be like Division 1 athletes. As a matter of fact, they're just probably the opposite of that because that is, we won't go into that here, but it's just about self-regulation, what they do, and understanding your feelings. And again, you talked about being on a team. And well, if you're on a team, you have to be a good team player. And what does that mean? Sometimes you have to go along with what's best for the team, and maybe you're not going to be the star of the show, or maybe you have to have the attitude where, like, I'm going to give you a shout out. Great job, Courtney. You passed the ball 3 times instead of like being a little grumpy. Oh, Courtney, she had the ball a lot and I didn't. So I think it's about all of those lessons that I think are being taught. And I think because when it's a passion, I've been able to share the skills that I've accumulated along the way.
No, I love that. And that's exactly like I wanted to learn more about like how you've been able to pull all of these different skill sets into like your next venture. And as you mentioned, I love how you spoke about just with your own lived experience with your own children and their experiences in sport and leading to just how powerful sport truly is. I really do. I think they're doing incredible work with 241 Sports, just hearing, and I love how you mentioned this social emotional learning, because it really is like even what you were mentioning, understanding how to even self regulate your own emotions at a young age. And like you said, I mean, we're even in life, like, if you are on a team, there may be other people that have different talents, or maybe it's what's best for the team. So learning how to regulate your emotions or even to work harder next time, and that's even in life, is that sometimes we do like, I remember growing up in gymnastics, there were girls, especially when we would go to these summer camps, and you thought you were pretty decent until you got to the till you got to the top, and then you see there's even better gymnasts.
Exactly.
you know so I do. I think sport has a tendency, which is good, like to allow for becoming humble, of also motivating to become more hungry to have those positions, maybe to really drive forward for your team if you're given that opportunity to play in a sport or play in that game. So I love how you mentioned that. And, Mary, you have been speaking a lot about just like continuing to learn and ever so like becoming curious about different industries. I am actually curious to hear, Mary. Are you like, is there something particular right now that you're just kind of curious about? Maybe you're researching it now, or maybe you're reading books about it now.
Well, I'm always going to be curious, especially with, I think, AI. And I know everyone wants to talk about it, but how technology can strengthen connections, not replace it, because we know that's like impossible and that's not a good thing. So I'm definitely curious about that. But I'm also curious about how to pause, be grateful, but yet still keep striving. I want to learn more about that. I want to practice it more. I'm never going to be done with learning. I am always thinking about can I go back to school like my husband is? I shared with you before we hit the record button, later in life, getting his EDD in education technology. And when he does share that with many people, they do look at him like he's a little crazy, like he has 5 eyeballs, right? Because it's like, why are you doing that now? And so I aspire to do something similar. I'm always looking at, okay, what's the next certification I can get? I am actually a licensed insurance agent. I got that certification when I started at Nassau. So I can speak to consumers because it's a highly regulated industry. But again, taking an insurance exam, I was like, what if I don't pass? I had to go into this room with this computer and you were like, you couldn't take a break. And, but I think and then doing my certification or my certificate in AI and digital strategy at the Wharton School at UPenn, being with people from around the world, most of the people, not going to lie, as my daughter would say, you're quite a bit younger than me. And I was like, oh, people from all these countries. And they were so wonderful and smart. And again, I want to keep learning because look, here's the thing. Things are changing so fast, or they're going to continue to change fast. And I say things, I mean technology, but not just technology. I think, leadership and intergenerational or multi-generational workplace places. Um, and just, I think just living our lives.
It's so true. And, you mentioned with your husband going back to school, something I noticed, and maybe it was the influence of sport alongside school, but it wasn't until after my undergraduate degree that I really wanted to go to school again. Like, I really did, and I think it was probably more so the mentality of all I saw myself growing up was just Courtney, like, the gymnast, and being able to step away from that, like, once you were done with sport, but having a sheer passion to continue learning in different industries. Mary, I this is incredible. Like I said, just your career trajectory. You have been successful in different industries. Once again, with that sense of continuous learning, that growth mindset that you've been able to apply right now with all of the success. Like, what do you particularly define as having an impact in your career now or being, quote, successful? What does that look like now?
Yeah. Again, another really great question. I have this Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's sort of like a poem. It's a long quote and it's on my desk. And so I'm not going to read it, but I read it once when I'm in the office, which is, pretty frequent, obviously. And I think when I read that, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded.
I just love it. And, like, could you maybe expand upon that, what that means to you in particular?
Yeah. I think it's about having an impact, and I think too probably it's about, like, our the legacy that we wanna live, like, what's on our tombstone, as Todd Durkin would say, what do we want our tombstone to say? So, I think it's really about the impact that we have on others. It brings me such great joy, yes, to, build the business here, do my part at Nassau Financial Group to help 2-for-1 Sports in any way that I can so that they can scale up and grow and continue to leave their legacy, the legacy for kids. But it really is about helping others achieve, and I have a quote, that I wanted to make sure I shared with you, and it's Toni Morrison, "If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else." And I really think that to me is the best way to say it, is to it's not all about me. It's about what have I done today to help someone else, to bring someone else along, to invite someone else into under the tent, because we all know how important that is because some people get overlooked. There are people that are loud and they talk a lot and they do get attention. They always win all the awards. But then there are a lot of people who are amazing who can get overlooked. And so I want to be there and I want to find those people that are overlooked, that are real overlooked, but are really cool and really smart. And I want to see what I can do to help them because I know, like you said earlier, we're always going to learn from each other.
It is so true, Mary, and I love that quote. I have never heard of that particular quote before, and so what a beautiful message, and Mary, you took my next question, which was the quote question, which is amazing.
Sorry about that.
No, but it leaves us I would love to end on this. So your current role right now is in, or with, excuse me, Nassau Financial Group. So what is something that you are extremely proud of that you have accomplished thus far at Nassau Financial Group?
So many things, but I'm in my role in marketing is being able to create marketing assets that help our independent agents go out and sell our products to help clients again protect their savings and turn it into income for life, ideally. So that's what I'm most proud of. And it's a very generic answer, but it's also being able to do Prime Life podcast, right? I love that. Talk about longevity. And and I always say this, I love doing our internal health and wellness videos because I love that aspect. It's something that's a through line for me. And I feel blessed and I feel humbled that I'm able to do that and impart because part of the ethos at Nassau Financial Group, there are many core values that we have, but it's that piece about the importance of health and wellness. And so I love to draw people in. We have all kinds of activities here, the strongest competition. A lot of people are involved in triathlons and different things. And it's being able to be a part of that brings me great joy.
I absolutely love that. And Mary, I want to thank you sincerely for coming on the podcast. We have literally covered all three components in depth.
We have. And I also want to thank you, Courtney, for being a very detailed host and for giving me the platform to talk about my life and the things I've done. And you've been extraordinarily generous and gracious in your kind words. And I am truly grateful for this opportunity. So thank you for all you're doing, spreading the word of positivity, and you're aligning that balance of life, career, and sports all into one. And so keep doing what you're doing. And if there's anything I can do to further help you, please do not hesitate to reach out to me again.
Mary, thank you so much for that compliment. So, Mary, genuinely, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks so much, Courtney.
Thank you, Mary.